This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, MICHAEL COVEL. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. Today on the show, I have Bobby Casey. Bobby and I met in the fall of 2013 in Singapore. We happened to be randomly sitting at one of those big circular dinner tables at a conference. We got to talking, and I realized that I wanted to have him on my podcast. Just because in his world, an expat, as an American who's gone to live abroad, to help others to navigate the issues of living abroad, to help others navigate the issue of asset protection, passports, the whole 9 yards. I said, wow, this is interesting. Now, I have no idea what I will do. As of right now, I'm an American citizen. I doubt that will ever change. But I was curious to hear his perspective as an American who has moved and lives in Latvia and assists other people with navigating these issues. Because look, there's some really cool stuff here. Travel, alternate cultures. Are you happy now? Are you happy in the grind of middle America somewhere or some big city? Is it still exciting to you? Are you looking for something different? Is the routine, the mundane, just killing you alive? This is why I wanted to have Bobby on. I thought his perspective, even if you don't like his perspective, or you do like his perspective, it's inspiring nonetheless. Because he said to himself, I'm going to do something different. I'm not going to be the same thing as everyone else that I grew up around. And I love that kind of attitude. I hope you enjoy. I left to go to Asia February 1st of last year on a speaking tour mostly. And after 4 or 5 months, I was like, well, where did I have the most fun? Well, I'm going to sign a lease in Saigon. So in some ways, ultimately getting to the same place that you are mentally, so to speak. But what was it? I have a feeling it's something similar, even though a different country, a different continent. What was it that when you got to Estonia and even going back to Latvia, what was it about? How did you know immediately? I mean, there's so many Americans out there that just, it really becomes this thing of like, well, these other places might be great, but I don't want to ever lose touch, or there's something about America and I just don't want to do this other thing. It becomes this visceral gut thing. It's not really rooted in reality. So what did you see that immediately said, this works for me? Well,
you got a good point, and I'll make a point with something a buddy of mine says. A buddy of mine, he's a real estate developer down in Nicaragua. His name is Mike Cobb. And Mike gives presentations about moving overseas and real estate development and blah, 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 that sort of thing. And Mike says, when you go to a new country, like if you're thinking about moving overseas, retiring, living overseas, for whatever reason, you typically know within 2 or 3 days if you hate the place, right? And I've been places before. I've been to, I don't know how many dozens of countries now. I stopped counting. But I've been to places before when I was there for a day or 2 or 3, and I'm like, I don't have a good feeling. I don't know what it is, if it's gut instinct, if it's intuition, whatever it is, you just say, 2 or 3 days, that's enough. I don't like this place. I couldn't live here. And from my perspective, when I go places, I think from the perspective, could I live here? Right? And I'm not, I'll give you an example, a great example. Quito, Ecuador. I hated it. Now, some people love Ecuador. I don't know why. And I've only been to Quito, as my disclaimer, I've only been to Quito. I haven't been to Cuenca or any of the other or Guayaquil or any of the other little beach towns, and maybe they're much nicer, but I hated it. And I knew the very first day I was there. I was only there 4 days, 5 days. I knew the very first day I was there, I was like, there's no way I would want to live here. No way. I got a bad feeling about it. I didn't like the culture. Just, there's really nothing I liked about the place. When I arrived in Estonia, I liked it a lot. Now, this may go back to childhood memories. When I was 12 years old, I had a really amazing history, social studies teacher. Amazing woman. And she took our class. I mean, obviously, we had to pay for it and everything. But she took her social studies class, and I went to Europe, and we went to Switzerland, Germany, Austria, and Italy. I think that's right. And we had like a 2-week trip. And as a 12-year-old kid, 11 or 12, whatever I was, I absolutely loved the small European cities with the cobblestone streets and the narrow streets and the beautiful architecture, and it was just so picturesque. And when I arrived in Estonia, that's what I saw. And my first impression was, I love this place. Absolutely loved it. And then living there for a while, it just the more I was there, the more I liked it. I liked the culture of the people. I liked, I liked that my apartment was right in the center of town, and I could literally walk downstairs, and there was a little cafe and bar at the bottom of my steps. There was a restaurant in my building. There was a pizza place across the street from literally 8 steps across from my door was the best pizza place in town. If I wanted to go for a walk, I could walk out. The quality of life was just so much better there. And
can I ask you though, is the real conclusion though, for those that have not gone, those that have not really done any extensive non-US traveling, the real conclusion is you got to go experience something. You just can't read about it. You can't go look at a video on the internet. You got to go feel it. There's something about the feel and the smell that has nothing to do with the sight. Something that just feels. And I think until you go and experience these other places, you just got to take the shot at some point in time, and then things can unfold from there.
Absolutely. Just yesterday, I was talking to a very good friend of mine. I've known him for years. Actually, him and I did an executive education program at MIT about 10 years ago, and we've been really good friends ever since. He runs a hedge fund, and he's a trader on the floor at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. Really, really smart guy. He sent me a message on Skype over the weekend, Saturday or Sunday, I can't remember. And the message said, "We need to talk. I need to get the hell out." I said, "Okay, well, let's talk." And he said, "Well, I've got to run out the door now. Let's talk." So anyway, we talked yesterday for about an hour. And he lives in Chicago. I mean, he's a trader on the floor, but he doesn't have to be a trader on the floor.
Yeah, because trading on the floor is kind of dead these days to some degree.
Yeah, the only reason I'm not going to mention his name because he's a pretty high-profile guy, but he's always on Fox News and CNBC and Bloomberg, and he's one of the experts they always pull to talk to about certain topics or whatever. And the only reason he has stayed on the floor for so many years, he's been on the floor, 16, 17 years. And he says the only reason he stays on the floor now is because of his media attention, because that helps his businesses being on TV every day.
Right.
He can trade from anywhere in the world as long as he has a laptop and a cell phone. So he said, "Look, I'm just sick and tired of paying an astronomical amount of money for renting a nice apartment in Chicago. I'm sick of paying a stupid amount of money in property taxes and income taxes living in Illinois." He said, "I just want out." He said, I'm sick of watching you having so much fun living and traveling and being in all these cool places." He said, "And I'm just day in and day out drudging the same channel to work every day, right? Taking the same road, same path, eating in the same place for breakfast. He said, I want something more. I want something more interesting. And I said, look, I agree 100%. Obviously, I'm biased because I've done that, and that's my lifestyle now. But ultimately, none of us are getting any younger, right? I mean, Michael, I don't know how old you are, but my buddy, he's in his early 40s. And
I'm only 19. You're
19,
probably a little older than I am.
Yeah, well, and I don't know how old you are, but if you say you're 19, clearly those are city miles. Clearly those are city miles. But my buddy's early 40s, and still a young guy. He's got a lot of working left in him, but you don't want to be 82 years old saying, okay, now I want to do it. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you want to live. You want to get out and live your life and experience what you want to do. And so I told him, I said, look, let's call him Joe. Like I said, I don't want to use his name, but let's call him Joe. I said, here's the deal, Joe. Commit to 6 months living in another country. Now, do a little research and do stuff that makes sense for you. Obviously, don't commit to going someplace for 6 months if it's a dangerous place and you feel like you're going to get murdered every time you walk outside, right? I said, but commit to find some place that makes sense for you. If you want to stay pretty close to the U.S., maybe look at somewhere in the Caribbean. I'm actually doing a private investment tour here in about 3 weeks with some of my clients, and he's going to go with me to check out this place. We're doing it in Anguilla, actually. So I'm going to take 10 people to do a private investment tour, and he wants to check it out because he may go live there. Anguilla is easy to get to. Anguilla is just the next island, north of St. Martin. So you fly into St. Martin, it's a 15-minute boat ride straight from the airport. So it's easy to get in and out of. St. Martin, it's a big airport with a lot of connections in the U.S. I said, but if you want to pick that, fine. Or if you want to live someplace like Panama City, because that's easy to get it. I mean, if you're doing business, you kind of want an airport, a decent sized airport nearby, right? And pick some place like that and commit to it for 6 months. Because if you don't commit 6 months, what's going to happen is you're going to show up in the first few days, assuming it's not one of these places you get the immediate feel that you don't like it. You're going to show up, and in the first few days, you're going to love it because it's different, it's new, it's exciting, it's challenging to you. You're learning new things, you're finding new restaurants, and it's a completely different experience. But sometimes, if you don't have a lot of experience with travel or living overseas, that next month can be a pain, really. I mean, you go to the grocery store and you're cussing because you can't find the stupid peanut butter, right? Or you can't read the signs because they're not in English, or you can't find an English-speaking person to help you, or you can't figure out how to do some bureaucratic thing related to getting your residency or getting a visa or something like that. So sometimes if you don't commit 6 months, you kind of have to get over that little hump. I don't know, Michael, maybe you experienced it living in Asia. You kind of have to get over that little hump where you overcome that culture shock and begin to embrace that local culture. Did you feel that?
Well, I'll add one thing as you're talking about some of the island locations. I like islands for vacation, but I definitely know that when it comes to living, I want city amenities, meaning I don't want to have to mess around with anything. I want to know that it's all there. And I do find, by and large, the big cities, and I saw this in every big Asian city, everything's there. Language isn't an issue. That's what I found in the big cities. Now, the smaller places, I think that's generally where you can find more issues like you're describing.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Now, me personally, I wouldn't want to live full-time on an island. There's other issues there. I mean, you're like Anguilla. Have you ever been to Anguilla?
I've not, no.
Now, the good thing about Anguilla, by the way, it's only a 15 or 20-minute water taxi ride away from St. Martin. And St. Martin has all of those amenities you would want. Lots of nice restaurants. They got movie theaters. They've got big box shopping and anything you want to do. St. Martin is, if you don't know, is split in two. The northern half of St. Martin is a French overseas territory, and the southern half of St. Martin is a Dutch overseas territory. So it's technically you're in a European country when you're in there. And it is still a Caribbean island, but you do have all those amenities. But you are still on an island. You still do have that. Now,
that's something you really have to go do to experience the difference between those two types of settings. It's kind of hard for me or you to tell someone, hey, you're going to like this or like that. You really gotta compare them in your own mind, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And for me, I grew up in the country on land, and when I lived my last house in North Carolina, I had several acres of land in the countryside, in farming country. So I lived in that countryside environment. And so now I want the city. Like you said, Mike, I want that city, right? I want, just before we got on the phone, I literally walked downstairs and got a cup of coffee and a sandwich for lunch. And I was gone 10 minutes. And I wouldn't have been gone 10 minutes, but I asked them to heat the sandwich up. But, it took me no time. I can look out of my window, and the best bakery in the country is right across the street. If I look to the right, a beautiful park is right there. Like I said, the coffee shop is downstairs. On my block, there's literally, technically, I wouldn't have to leave my block because I have a grocery store on my block. I have 2 great restaurants on my block, 2 coffee shops, a bakery, and a park.
Hey, look, here, I think the most dense that I've seen it is Hong Kong. You can literally live your entire life within 100 meters. Not my cup of tea to only stay within 100 meters, but in Hong Kong, it's so vertical you can do it.
That's true. You can live in one building. I think you could live in one building in Hong Kong. That's crazy.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, when you and I were in Singapore together a few weeks ago, I went to Hong Kong right after Singapore. And I remember going into a building to go to dinner one night that was a couple of blocks away from my hotel. And I remember going into the building, and the building, I don't know, 50 floors, 60 floors, whatever it was. And it was like grocery store, shopping mall, restaurant, bar, 10 floors of hotel. Like you could literally, maybe 10 floors of apartments, and you could literally live in that building and never walk outside for 5 years if you really wanted to. Now, I wouldn't want to live like that, but let me finish what I told my buddy Joe, right? I said, commit to 6 months. Make sure you get it set up before you leave that you can still easily communicate back to the U.S. And nowadays, that's easy.
We're on Skype.
You get Skype. You get an unlocked cell phone so you can plug in SIM cards from wherever you're going. All right. For example, let's say he decides he wants to live in Panama City. You go to Panama City, you go to the Digicel office, and you get a SIM card for your unlocked iPhone or Samsung Galaxy or whatever you got. You plug it in. You got a local cell phone. You get Skype with a U.S. number, so all your buddies can call you and work can call you on your U.S. number. You get a good quality, laptop, which he probably already has anyway. That's light and easily packable, and from a work perspective, that's about it. But I said, look, what you do is go get a climate-controlled storage unit in Chicago, move all of your furniture out, put it in there, because you're only committing for 6 months. If you get there and 6 months later you say, this sucks, I hate it, never want to do this again. So what? Go back, rent a U-Haul truck, go rent an apartment or a house or whatever, and go to your storage unit and fill up your U-Haul and go fill up your house again with the furniture that you took out 6 months ago. If you decide, you know what, I love it, I don't ever want to live in Chicago again, fly back, visit some friends and family, stop by your office, whatever, and go run an ad on Craigslist doing a garage sale out of your storage unit and sell everything in one afternoon, close the garage unit, hand them the keys, and you're done. So it's not that complicated.
No, let me add also in the technology as you bring that up. I find after doing a year in Asia, and I was in 8 or 9 different countries, I find technology is simply not the issue at all. If there is any difference that you have to get used to, is the time zone issues. And I find the time zone issues can actually be advantageous in some ways. For example, I started to do interviews where I would call people morning East Coast time, and it'd be my night. And I kind of liked that. I was kind of, unwound a little bit, and it was their morning, and I didn't have to be up early to do it. So that's the real issue. But if you're ever thinking there's a technology issue, that's definitely not the case. I mean, I, for example, my situation, I did what you said. I had the unlocked iPhone. But I never even went the SIM card route because I had, 600 text messages, that were global. And I ended up not even using those because there's so much Wi-Fi everywhere. So it really becomes a non-issue on technology.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, for me, I travel. I mean, like we were discussing earlier, I travel usually 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks every month. I mean, I have a home base here in Latvia. I own property here. For me, I have SIM cards everywhere I go. I mean, I have every country, but they're just prepaid SIM cards. It's not that big of a deal. Like, I'll be in Vegas in two weeks. Yeah, I'll be in Vegas in 2 weeks, and I have a T-Mobile SIM card, and it's really pretty simple. I pop out the back and the battery out of I have a Samsung Galaxy S4. I put in my T-Mobile SIM card. I keep credits on there. I just load it with my credit card. I call up, and then I activate the $3 a day plan with T-Mobile. The $3 a day plan with T-Mobile gives me unlimited talk, text, and high-speed data on my phone for every day it's activated. So if I'm in the U.S., let's say I'll be in the U.S., I think 5 or 6 days. So I'll pay $15 for unlimited use of my cell phone while I'm in the U.S. And then when I'm leaving the U.S., I call the number on the 611, the information number, and I deactivate the $3 a day plan, pull the SIM card out, put it in my backpack, and then I put the one in for the next place I'm going to. I'll be going to Anguilla, so I'll put in my Anguilla, I think it's Lime. I'll put in my Anguilla SIM card, and it just has credits on it. If I need more credits, I just add it while I'm there. It's so easy to do now. It's ridiculous.
I think your advice will probably be better for 95% of the population, maybe 99.9%. I'm the crazy person who actually got there and was like, hold on, this is awesome. Nobody can call me anymore. So I didn't pick up a phone call, literally have a phone ring in my hand for nearly a year. So I got addicted to that. But hey, listen, I'm going to shift gears on you a little bit because there's so many different things that we could talk about. And obviously at the end, we'll give a place where people can reach out to you for more information. And because there's a ton of issues that you and your firm are involved in. But I felt like maybe we could pick 1 or 2 things to give people a broad overview on some of the issues that they might encounter looking to live overseas. For example, Number 1, and I brought this up with you because I have Lithuanian heritage on my father's side, and you immediately, and of course, right next to Latvia, pretty much, and you immediately started to tell me some of the details, and I have a feeling your data bank, so to speak, of how passport issues navigate. You probably have information in your own mind about multiple different countries, but maybe you could give an example of just kind of walking through somebody like me, just briefly, how using a Lithuania past heritage today and how somebody that might be able to assist you today and the benefits of going through that process.
Okay, so I'll make a comment first of all about Lithuania, okay? Because this is pertinent information for any listener who's serious, interested, and also, Mike, for you too. Have you? I'll ask first. Have you ever been to Lithuania?
I've not been.
I'm telling you, visit. Vilnius, for me, is only about a 3.5, 4 hour drive. Vilnius is a very, very cool city and ridiculously cheap right now. It's incredibly cheap. See, Lithuania still is on the lita, with their local currency. Latvia just 6 days ago adopted the euro. My apartment that I bought last year in Latvia, the property value literally in less than 1 year has already gone up 40% since adopting the euro. No kidding. I could easily right now make six-figure gain on selling my apartment if I wanted to. And this exact same thing happened in Estonia when they adopted the euro, because that opens up the floodgates to outside investment from Europe. It also opens up the floodgate from outside investment from Russia, because now Russia can more easily integrate into the European economy.
It brings liquidity.
It brings liquidity, which brings money, which raises prices. Lithuania, in exactly 1 year, well, let's say 359 days, January 1st, right now they're scheduled to adopt the euro. So this year is the perfect time to go and buy property in Lithuania. And if you're an outside investor, you want to think about Vilnius. Vilnius is the capital. It's a absolute beautiful city. And quite frankly, I'm going there probably when I get back from this month-long trip. I'm bouncing around. I'm going to go to Lithuania and start looking at apartments. Because I just want to buy one just for the heck of it. For one, I like the city. But two, I think in the next 2 years, it's going to go up 30, 40, 50% in price. But Vilnius is a great place. And yes, you could get your citizenship in Vilnius. And Vilnius being an EU country, that gives you that coveted EU passport.
Okay, somebody out there is listening, and maybe their ancestry is of a different country, and
Sure.
and every country is going to have different processes, and some might not be as favorable. So if we just keep going down the pathway of Michael Covevel, whose father, I think my father's grandfather was born in Lithuania, I think, on both sides of the family for my father's side. So how does that work, so to speak?
Well, I can't tell you exactly in Lithuania. I mean, I'd have to go read their citizen. I'd have to read the citizenship section in their constitution to figure that out. I mean, I could research that. It would take me about an hour to get that answer. But I'm
asking more generally and how you've seen these things. Yeah.
Yeah, but I could tell you generally in Lithuania, they are trying to attract citizens. They really want new citizens. And so they are making it much, much easier and much more open for ancestry rights or people with ancestry rights to come back and reclaim citizenship. It's much, much, much easier now. Even this year, 2013, last year, Latvia also just opened up their doors to citizenship. See, up until October 1st last year, you couldn't have dual citizenship in Latvia. If you became a Latvian citizen, you had to give up your other citizenship. Well, now, October 1st, they changed that law, and you can hold dual citizenship now. So Latvia, you can come here, buy a piece of property, and get permanent residency for 5 years. And after 5 years, you can apply for citizenship. It's actually a very easy path to go to get citizenship here. And you can get a piece of property for it, too. And you're not paying an exorbitant government fee to get it. It's just, normal fees for registering property and, getting your passport and stuff like that. But up until last year, they couldn't do it. In the Baltics in general, they're liberalizing this a lot to attract foreign immigration, because they realize they need to be able to compete on a global scale. And in order to compete, they need to create incentives to attract smart business people with capital. And so they're doing some really smart things. But we have we publish a newsletter. I think, Mike, I told you this. We publish a newsletter where we interview a lot of our connections in different countries about how to obtain citizenship in these different places. I just did one last week for Paraguay. We got a connection there that can expedite Paraguay. So you can get citizenship in Paraguay in like 3.5 years. And it's cheap and easy to do. Just takes a little bit of time.
Bobby, let me stop you for a sec. I got to ask. So, because I have a feeling a lot of people are thinking this right now. If let's say they're a U.S. citizen, okay, now I have my citizenship in Paraguay or Lithuania. have I now given up a citizenship somewhere like America?
Depends on the country. So, like the Latvia example before, if you did the deal in Latvia prior to October 1st last year, if you did the deal in Latvia, you bought a piece of property, you had residency there for 5 years, and you went and applied for citizenship, yes, you would have to give up any other citizenship you might hold. After October 1st, you're not. So it really depends on that country. Germany, for example, they don't allow dual citizenship except under some very specific situations. The U.S., however, does not officially recognize dual nationality or dual citizenship, but they don't prevent you from obtaining any number. I mean, you could go become a citizen of 10 other countries if you can, afford it, justify it, and make it happen. They don't disallow it. There's no restrictions on it. It's just from the U.S. State Department's perspective, you're just a U.S. citizen. They don't think of you as a U.S. citizen and a Paraguayan citizen, right? You're only a U.S. citizen of the U.S. So,
well, the benefit of the citizenship, and this is just really cracking the egg, so to speak, and just kind of your first step into the process, is the citizenship benefit of the second country is ultimately starts to become the monetary benefit by being associated with that second country.
Oh, well,
that's Pandora's box. It's a long conversation, but just getting people thinking about this.
I could go on and on and on and on about the various benefits for having a second passport, second citizenship. We'll use Lithuania or Poland or Italy or whatever, for example. If you're a citizen of an EU country, there's 28 EU member states. And by having citizenship in any one of those 28 EU member states, it gives you, according to the Treaty of the Functioning of the European Union, you have free rights of establishment. You can live in any other EU country, live, work, bank, buy property, own property, freedom of travel. It's borderless. It's borderless in the EU if you're an EU citizen. It's just like living in the U.S. You can easily go from, Virginia to Maryland, right? There's no border crossing there. Same thing, you can go from Poland into Germany. There's no border crossing because they're both EU countries. So that's one benefit, because it does make your life a lot easier. Another benefit that I primarily talk about, because we're in the financial services, our primary business is financial services, is the financial aspect. If you're an American citizen with only an American passport, there's a lot of doors closed to you for investment and business opportunities. I mean, there's I don't know how many banks won't accept you as a client. I mean, in the past 2 years, I probably had 50 banks we've worked with send me emails or calls or letters or whatever saying, as of XYZ date, we no longer accept American clients. Please note this for your records, that sort of thing. I get those letters I still get them. I'm getting them all the time. Banks do not want American clients. They don't want your funds.
What a brutal thing to say. And it's true. It's an awful thing that's happened.
They don't care how much money you have. They don't want you. And it's not they don't want you. They don't want to have to deal with your government, the American government, because the cost of compliance for having an American client is so high. They just don't want to have to deal with the issues. And this is 100% pushed by the American government. And ultimately, the end game is it's a territorial idea, that the U.S. government wants to keep all that money at home. So they basically make it so hard for you to move your money overseas, you have no choice but to keep it at home. I mean, it's protectionism at its finest, right? I mean, but ultimately, the end result is you have people like Eduardo's sovereign worth, $10 billion that says, you know what? I don't want to be trapped. Forget it. I'll just expatriate. I'll give up my citizenship, move to Singapore. And now we lose a hugely productive entrepreneur and investor who has an enormous amount of capital, right? I mean, we lose people like that with these protectionist policies. But the financial aspect is just one of the huge benefits. I mean, And of course, let's say, this is 1 in a million chance, but trust me, you don't want to be the guy, the American passport holder on the plane that gets hijacked, that walks down the aisle, says, "Show me your passport."
It better be 1 in a million.
Yeah, you don't want to be that guy, right? I mean, I'd much rather show them a Lithuanian passport than an American passport. I promise you, they don't care too much about Lithuania, because Lithuania is not invading any of their countries and droning their weddings, right?
It's a good point you make, and I think generally I find that as an individual American traveling abroad, as long as you show respect, are a decent person, are nice to people, I find the response back to me is wonderful. However, I think you are 100% right that if the proverbial shit hits the fan, holding up the American passport, unfortunately, is not necessarily a benefit at that point in time.
Right. And like I said, it's a 1 in a million chance, right? It's a 1 in a million chance. But if you're that 1 in a million, you will be thanking your lucky stars you made the decision to get that Lithuanian passport. I can promise you. And I speak strictly from a financial. I talk from a financial perspective. I could tell you right now, Mike, if you called me up as a client of mine and said, "Hey, I need you to help me, open an offshore company and a bank account somewhere," and I say, "Okay, Mike, what passports do you have?" And you say, "Okay, well, I just have an American passport." Your options just shrunk dramatically on what I can offer to you as a prospective client.
You know what's sad about this, though, too, is I think, there's still a huge number of Americans. And look, this is not like an anti-American conversation or anything like that. But I mean, we're just talking objectively, but there's a huge number of Americans. I think it's over 70% that don't have passports. And then if you really narrow it down, the numbers of Americans that travel outside the U.S. for non-business on an annual basis, I think is something less than 10 million. It's a very small number. And so I think a lot of people probably might think, well, this is not for me. This is not for me. I don't have to worry about this. And my retort would be, my gosh, haven't you been paying attention for the last 5, 6, 7 years? I mean, when the next equity market bubble pops, who knows what Federal Reserve policy is going to be instituted? Are they going to have negative interest rates? I mean, look, I'm not just trying to be like some alarmist here. I mean, anyone that's paying attention realizes that the game changed in the fall of 2008, period.
Yeah, agreed. It was a game changer.
And I feel like I have to keep giving the disclaimer because I don't want anybody texting me and saying, "Oh, you sound anti-American, Mike." No, we're just being real here. I'm going through the process right now for a Chinese visa for the second time. I did it last year. I'll do it again this year for 2014. And when you go through the paperwork for the Chinese visa, as you're filling it in, you realize it's not because China wants to, keep me and my money out. No, not at all. China's just doing it because, you know what? They're a big, wealthy country too. And they don't like the fact that we have these crazy visa restrictions for all these wealthy Chinese that want to come into America, bring their money, buy things, help the economic development. And we put a big old wall up and says, you can't come in. So they're really just kind of saying, hey, you know what? You're going to do it to us. We're going to do it to you.
Yeah, Brazil was blatantly clear about that. Brazil started their visa that for Americans, all Americans have to get a visa, a pre-approved visa before they go to the U.S. Because the U.S. has a visa requirement for going to Brazil. So Brazilians now have it for going to America. And guess what? The amount of the cost of the visa, the government fee for the visa, is the same each way. Brazil said, if you're going to charge us, we're going to charge you.
Yeah, I had to go through that process with Brazil too. And you get there and clearly, they're not looking to keep Americans out or anything. It's more like just saying, hey, we're not going to be pushed around.
Yeah. I mean, I don't blame them, to be honest. It's sad, but
yeah.
I don't blame them for it. Anyway.
Listen, Bobby, there's so many, I was going through your website this morning. There's so many different areas that we can touch on. And I know you and your firm really go into all these issues. As we wrap up right now, why don't you go ahead and give out the best web location where people can reach out to you and go down the rabbit hole, so to speak, on all these assorted issues, because it can get complicated and it's not something, frankly, I've looked into a lot of these issues myself, and, you can go down the path of trying to figure everything out yourself, or you can go tap on the shoulder of somebody who's been there, done it. And I like the tap on the shoulder routine. It's so I think it'd be a good thing for maybe you to hand out your location where people can look up for more information about you and maybe reach out to you if they want to talk about some of the services that you offer for people that are looking to make some of these transitions that you and I have been talking about.
Okay, so our company, Global Wealth Protection, that's our main business. The website is www.globalwealthprotection.com. Okay, that's our core business. Basically, we do asset protection and offshore planning for clients. It's a consulting business. Clients come to us and say, hey, I want to internationalize my assets. I want to move some money offshore. Can you help me? And we help find the right solutions for them, be it offshore trust, offshore foundations, setting up offshore companies, bank accounts, investments, that sort of thing. So that's the consulting end of the business. That's the front end. That was my original business that I started years ago. That's how I got into this. Then, and then also behind that, we also own a trust company down in Anguilla, which is where all of our offshore work kind of funnels through, is the trust company down there. But we also have offices, like I said, in Panama and Belize, Seychelles. We have a representative office in Cook Islands, and basically our business is completely offshore related, primarily revolving around the financial services, but then we have the education aspect to help educate people on the other factors that are important about internationalizing your life.
Well, like I said, when I first met you, I told you that this is not typically the conversation that I have on my podcast, but I've started to realize this is a path that I'm going down in my own life. And I start to realize that this is something that a lot of people, if they're exposed to, become quickly interested in. And I think everyone can look at the headlines and just look at their everyday life and realize, hey, not only would all this stuff be great for asset protection and whatnot, but it's fun. I mean, at the end of the day, it's fun to see other countries, to go explore, meet other people. You can only take so much of the Walmart and the box malls.
Right. You're right. And that's a good point you make. And a lot of people say, gosh, it must be so difficult to do this and expensive and everything. I can tell you, just the money I save in taxes alone, and this is not tax evasion and any of this stuff, right? There are legal, legitimate tax benefits for living as a non-U.S. resident. I mean, I'm an American citizen, but living as a non-U.S. resident, the tax benefits alone I get living outside of the U.S. more than pay for my entire travel budget every year.
Yeah. And I probably I'm probably very limited on my education of all of those benefits, but just going through my life in 2013, I could start to add them up and see them pretty quickly.
It's crazy. And then, the other point is, okay, you basically, if you can structure your life in such a way where you can do this. Now, obviously, it has to be something you want to do. Some people are homebodies, right? One of my best friends I've known for 20 years, he lives in North Carolina, honestly, and he doesn't even like going to the next town. He hates traveling, hates it. Clearly, my lifestyle is not for him. And I see him whenever I visit North Carolina. We're good buddies. We go out to dinner. We have a good time, and we go shoot guns or whatever, go ride motorcycles. But he doesn't want my lifestyle. So obviously, you need to have a desire for that. But if you have the desire for that, it's really not as hard to make happen as you want. I mean, plane tickets, if you're smart about when to buy them and where you're buying them and that sort of thing, it's not that expensive. I mean, I could fly all the way around the world for $2,000. It's not that hard to do. You can structure your life in such a way that living like this is actually pretty easy. It's much more interesting. In my perspective. Okay, I don't want to sound arrogant about it.
Let me add about the desire thing, though. You're right.
Yeah.
If you don't have the desire, you might not like it. However, I will challenge the entire audience to think about this. If you think you don't have the desire, but you've never done it, get on your butt and at least take a 2-week trip, because you can't think through the desire without going there and seeing it.
But let me add to that. Instead of a 2-week trip, take a 1 to 2 month trip.
There you go. I agree.
Because if you take a 2-week trip, you live like you're on vacation.
Yeah.
If you take a 1 to 2 month trip, now you're having to go to the grocery store. You're having to go shopping, for toilet paper at the supermarket. You're living as a local if you're there for a month or two. If you're there for 2 weeks, you're probably living in a hotel. You're eating the continental breakfast in the morning. You're going out to the cafes for lunch and dinner, and you're visiting tourist sites for 1 or 2 weeks. You're trying to, in 1 or 2 weeks, you're trying to cram in everything in that environment into a small window. If you're there for a month or two, you get to live and experience more like a local would. And to me, that's much more interesting. It's much more interesting than living like you're on vacation.
Yeah, you're right on the money about that. You really have to. And you know what? If your desire is such that you think, I won't like this, and then you go do the 1 to 2 months and you still don't like it, okay, you don't like it. You don't have the desire. But there are going to be some people that think they don't have the desire, that when they're exposed to it, they go, my gosh, this is the best thing since sliced bread. I'm telling you, you're out there and you don't even know it.
Yeah. A lot of people, that lack of desire is not necessarily a lack of desire, but it's an abundance of fear.
Yeah.
And my buddy who lives in North Carolina, he doesn't have the desire, and he says he doesn't. But maybe it's just the fear. He's scared. A lot of people, I think by nature, they fear change, and they actually like complacency. But if you're a little bit bored with your life, or you think, I don't want to be complacent, or, hey, guess what? I only get to ride this roller coaster of life once. Let's see what it has to offer, and let's take in all the sights, so to speak. Then, like you said, Mike, get out there and spend a month or two. Go live. I mean, you go rent a cheap apartment in Panama City for a month or two and see what it's like. I'm not promoting Panama City. Personally, I wouldn't really want to live there. I go there quite a bit, but I don't think I'd want to live there. But some people love it. Right. Let
me, as we're talking this, I want to add one quick thing, and you might think I'm nuts, but I think the audience might relate to something crazy like this. So this last year, I had a 3-week stay in Malaysia. I've gotten pretty good at making myself part of the society very fast. So I was staying at a hotel, and I needed a yoga instructor. I go online, I find a yoga instructor in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. She comes out, she teaches me yoga. She's like, what are you doing here? I'm like, well, I really don't have a plan. I did a speaking engagement. She goes, why don't you come out with me? We did yoga a couple of times. She goes, why don't you come out with me and my boyfriend? He's in a band. I'm like, yeah, okay. Next thing I know, 2 days later, I'm 30 minutes outside Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, in some smaller town. I'm watching a heavy metal band with a guy who basically grew up in America, who could play great guitar, and you just kind of smile to yourself, and you're like, man, this world is not... There is just so much stuff going on that people don't think about. How could I have ever predicted that I would have been in some small bar listening to heavy metal outside Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia? I mean, it's just off the charts.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
you've got a zillion of these stories, I know.
I've got a zillion of these stories. Just being in some, I could tell you one funny one. Me and a buddy of mine who used to live in Germany. We were doing a motorcycle tour. I'm a big motorcycle guy. I used to race for a long time, and we were doing a motorcycle tour through Germany and Switzerland. It's been a few years ago, and we stopped. We had no agenda. We just on bikes. We stopped in this town in the mountains in Switzerland, and we thought, okay, this town looks as good as any. Let's stop and find a place to stay. We stopped. There was one little hotel there. We rented a room. We walked across the street, ate dinner at the it's a tiny little town, tiny little town. Walked across the street and ate dinner. Right next door was a bar. We're like, okay, let's go have a beer. Sat down at the bar, and I remember it was just me and him, and the bartender was a girl named Carolina. And I remember her name was Carolina because I'm from North Carolina, so that's how I remember. And we sat there and talked to her, I don't know, 20 minutes, and nobody was in the bar. And it was like the only bar in the middle of the town. Now, it was a small town, but we thought it's the only bar. Why wouldn't there be more people here? We sat there for 20 minutes, and we're like, hey, Carolina, what's going on? Where is everybody? And she said, oh, well, there's a music festival down at the fairgrounds tonight, so everybody's down there. And I said, well, shoot, we should probably go to that. I kid you not, that girl had the cash register checked out and her jacket on, her purse in her hand, and the lights turned off at the bar in less than 90 seconds. And my buddy and I just looked at each other and we're like, okay, I guess she wants to go now. So she was like, come on, guys, jump in the car with me. So we jumped in the car with this girl and we drove down some little mountain country road. And it was the craziest thing. We ended up in a country western bar. I mean, literally with the rough hardwood floors and the swinging doors, just like you would see from an old country western movie. We walk in, everyone's wearing cowboy boots with spurs and cowboy hats on. This is in the middle of nowhere mountains in Switzerland, and they're playing bluegrass and like old country western. I don't mean like Hank Williams Jr., I mean like Hank Williams Sr., old country music. Line dancing, and we just looked at each other, we're like, what the hell? Where did we just end up? Like, this is... But that sort of thing, you never experience that until you jump out of that comfort zone with both feet.
Yeah. And I think we both might not want to admit this, but the fun part is really number one, and then all these other benefits come number two.
Yeah, well, this is something that I decided. So you asked me before, how did I move overseas? Well, one of the things that I did make a conscious decision on was, look, I'm not happy with my business. I'm not happy with the way life's going now. And right now, my life revolves around my business, and it should not be that way. What I enjoy doing and the way I enjoy spending my time should be at the center of my life. My business should fit into the way I want to live, not the way I live fits in the way my business is. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well,
we get it backwards. So you're right. The fun and the lifestyle and the way I live is more important. I have built my business in such a way that it works with my lifestyle. I haven't built my lifestyle around the way my business works.
Well, clearly we could talk all day. I love these types of conversations, and maybe we'll just have to have one. We'll have another conversation in the future where we talk no business, but just exchange every unusual story we can that we've seen. It might become rated not for children, but
yeah, you're gonna have to pre-rate the show. I might have to drink some whiskey to jog my memory on some of the stories too.
Well, listen, hey Bobby, it's good chatting, and everyone's got all the information where they can reach out and contact you. But listen, I appreciate the time today, and it's It's early afternoon there in Latvia, right?
It's a couple of minutes after 4:00.
There you go. Hey, listen, you have a good one. We will talk soon, sir. Hopefully, we will catch up in person in the new year.
Okay, nice chatting with you. Take care.
Take care. I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.